This gathering, I think, has also been highly anticipated. We've gotten lots of questions and interest from folks within and outside of our yearly meeting. And the goal of this moment is for us to come together and to build foundations, to share ideas, and come to a series of messages and advice that can be used as a guidance to everyone in our community about how we approach the process of reopening. And we have already scheduled, so open up your calendars, a follow-up event for September 25th at 10 a.m., during which we will review in all of the specifics of the guidances that we lay the foundation for this evening. And I also want to highlight that we've been posting lots of advanced documents for this event. And I'm sure someone on staff will post the link to that place on the web where you can access the advanced documents. So if September 25th is too late and you're like, I got to make my budget for my meeting now or whatever, this section already has a sample worksheet that John Marquette just sent me today, and some sample guidances that some monthly meetings and quarterly meetings have been developing in terms of how to approach reopening. What are some of the queries to ask and things to consider? So head to that place, and then when we have the follow-up from this meeting, we'll share those advanced documents back out with any additions that come up here. The advanced documents also will include a link to participate in a questionnaire. And Melinda, will you say 2 words or 3 sentences about the questionnaire briefly?
Sure, thanks. It's a questionnaire for meetings to share what they have done with children and youth programs during the last year and a plus, and what they're thinking about going into the fall. So gathering both some of the wonderful things people have done, and also listening for where you are and what you need, what would best support meetings, sharing with each other, and for the yearly meeting to share support.
Thanks, Melinda. So before we begin, I also just want to ground us in at least what I've sensed in myself and in our community, which is that I think those around me and our whole society yearns to be able to go back. And there's a little bit of wishing that we could return, wind back the clock, have it be the way things used to be. And with that comes a sense of loss and grief in realizing that that's not possible, that we have all been irrevocably changed by this pandemic and by all of the things that it's meant. And we also notice that the folks who would be at our side coming back into the real world, some of them we've also lost as a result of the pandemic. So there's a lot of sadness and anxiety about the unknown. And we're still not sure exactly what things are going to look like, when we'll be able to open up, whether we'll ever be able to reach herd immunity, for example. And so that's why it's important for us to keep our strong bonds and stay together as a community, as a yearly meeting. It's why the yearly meeting is so important and why our local communities are as well. So let's transition to hearing from TJ Jurian, who will give us a brief review of the tech side of things.
Thanks, Zachary. So most of you have heard these a million times, so here it is for the millionth and first. So please remain muted when not speaking, especially as we are recording this evening. It'll be helpful to be able to capture people's voices accurately. If you would like to speak, click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself and then remute. If you're on the phone, you can use *6 to do the same. If you need to change your name or add any additional information, such as pronouns, you can either hover over your image until you see the 3 dots to click on and select rename, or you can go and do so from the participants icon on the menu bar, doing the same, hovering over your name and selecting rename. To raise your electronic hand, and there'll be a portion in the agenda later on where folks will need to do so. You can see the reactions icon at the bottom. And when you click on that, and I'll actually show you an image, you'll see this come up and you'll just click on raise hand. And that will show us your electronic hand, especially as we have a lot of folks in the space, we won't be able to actually see your physical hand. And you can do so by pressing *9 if you are on the phone. We also have closed captions, so please click on the CC icon and you'll be able to see a transcript running underneath. And for any sort of tech support, you can send a private message via chat to staff, particularly Kamani, who will be our primary tech guru for this evening. Thank you.
Awesome. And speaking of support and also of community, we've got a group of folks supporting us this evening that I wanted to briefly introduce, starting with TJ Jurian, who's our events and resources coordinator, who we just met. So hi, TJ. We also have several folks who will be leading small groups later on, and we'll get to hear from them in a bit. John Marquette, who serves on the program committee and administrative council. So we saw John wave. Hi, John. We have Meg Rose, who serves on staff as Young Adult Engagement Coordinator. Also Melinda Winter-Bradley, who is our Children's Religious Life Coordinator. Oscar Castro, who's our Director of HR and Inclusion. Kimani Keaton, who will be supporting the helpline and monitoring the chat, right? So if you're struggling with tech or needed to figure out something, zap Kimani a direct message. And we have Olivia Brangen, our Community Engagement Coordinator, who will be taking the notes from our session. We want to be really intentional about having really great follow-up from this. So Olivia is going to be taking notes, and that's going to be a really important part of our time together. So I think it's time for us to transition into the first part of our agenda, which is small groups. I want to create as much opportunity for folks to interact as possible. So as we're thinking about what the theme of this session and of the next 6 to 12 months of our lives might be, sort of what keeps coming to me when I'm talking and listening to people is the need for rest, reconnection, and reflection. And so grounded in a sense that we're maybe all really exhausted and also missing each other and also needing to figure out how to do all new and the same things in all different new ways. We're grounding ourselves in rest, reconnection, and reflection. So as we transition into our small groups, grounded in that sense, we'll have a query coming to discuss, which I hope someone on staff will post in the chat, which is, what are the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities that we face when we reopen? So what are the biggest challenges and our biggest opportunities for when we reopen? The first thing I want you to do when you get into your small group is identify 2 roles, someone who's willing to facilitate the discussion and someone who can take notes. We really want someone who can take notes, who's willing to do some tracking of common themes or common ideas or highlights, things that come up that seem like they would be worth highlighting. And then the note takers need to be able to email them to Olivia Brangan, who will compile them with the notes that she's taking. And I'll be reminding the note takers throughout this evening to please send them to Olivia. So, TJ, we ready to transition?
We are ready.
Awesome sauce. Everyone should be receiving an invitation to join a small group.
Hi, David. We just started breakout spaces. I assigned you to a space. So if an invite didn't show up, you can click the breakout rooms icon at the bottom. It should show up for you. And both Davids, I suppose, if you're having a hard time finding that.
You know, I forgot to say it's 20 minutes.
I'll broadcast it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask TJ if he wanted to send that. I'm going to pause the recording, if that would be okay. Or do you think we should just leave it going just in case we forgot and that it can be edited out?
Yeah, we can just, Carlton can just edit this part out.
Yeah, that's great.
How was that? Was it okay?
It was fantastic. It was great. Oh, here comes another registration.
A couple more folks coming in. So hold on.
Yeah.
Hi, folks. We've just started breakout spaces, so I am going to invite you to join a couple in a second. And I need to go to room 1 for assistance. I'll be right back.
I'm wondering, both Tom and David, if you need help getting into your breakout space.
So this is Tom. I'm actually still at work, so I am not going to be able to join the breakout space. I was just hoping to listen while I'm
Great.
finishing up on some stuff.
Fantastic. So we should reconvene in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
You know, feel free to just put yourself on mute and stay where you are, and then you'll
Okay.
hear us again regather.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Five new registrations since we started.
Cray, cray.
It's really lovely having the automated Zoom registrations.
I feel that.
Yeah, I have not gotten a single email. It's amazing.
Hallelujah.
Mm.
Um,
Hi, Shelley.
Hey, so happy to be with everyone here. I'm just curious, that's why I joined. I want to be in the know.
cool.
I just saw your message, Shell. Yeah, if you don't want to be in a breakout room, you don't need to be, or I can put you in one, however, whatever you like.
Right here is good.
Awesome.
Hey, can I ask a question? So my small group is about friends interested in contributing to forming a guidance document. And I guess what I had been thinking about is my sense is that that will be the least popular one, because it's the least descriptive and also the least fun. So I was sort of relying on the assumption that there would be not a lot of people and it could just be like a group of folks who want to contribute ideas to like what should go in a guidance document and how it could be like formed, and then who could like be a source of feedback from the community when we have the guidance document, so it's not just like staff and leadership. But I'm wondering whether that discussion would take 40 whole minutes. I'm sort of wondering whether we need to have that small group after all or not. Because I could just like ask, some people from one of the councils or something to give feedback on a guidance document that we make based on all the other conversations that are happening, and sort of only have 3, maybe 4, instead of 4, maybe 5 small groups. It was kind of last minute to be changing things, but I'm curious if people have thoughts.
I think there could be potential for discussion for 40 minutes. If it was more about what would you need to be in that guidance document so that when we are creating it, we know in advance, okay, let's look out for this and that or the other in terms of information. Let's take this into consideration, etc. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah,
Sharon.
yeah.
Folks are in breakout spaces right now, and we are at about 13 minutes left. So I'm happy to assign you to a space so you can jump in the conversation. It hasn't been going on for too long.
I thought it started at 7. I'm so sorry.
No problem at all.
You were early then, Sharon.
God bless you, Olivia.
All right, let me, for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's probably still good to have it was sort of framed more in terms of like, what would we be looking for in a guidance document to make sure we sort of covered all our bases.
Yeah.
I was imagining that as being a pretty big group.
Okay.
It's funny you should say that you were thinking it might be on the smaller side, but yeah, I can see the value of all the conversations. So I'm imagining that they'll pretty be evenly distributed between Meg's and Melinda's and Oscar's and yours and John's.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. And I think before we transition, I'll ask each facilitator to give like a couple sentences describing what the discussion will be about.
TJ and Zachary, I have eaten all of my meals today with you.
Wow. Yeah.
Kind of funny.
It's that kind of day, isn't it?
It's been a good day. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, something weird, so weird happened to me on my walk home from my trainer. I like had like seriously low blood sugar and I was all shaky and it felt like gravity was twice as strong as usual and like I was like almost crawling home. I don't know exactly what was going on, but I also didn't eat very well over the weekend. So
Did you eat before you worked out though?
I did, but I only had 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Maybe it was too high in sugar.
Is
Add
the
a banana in
weather
there.
is the weather
Mm.
also hot and humid where you are?
Yeah, it is. Maybe I was dehydrated. Where are you, Shelly?
I'm in Hockessin. I'm still trying to pronounce it properly. Hockessin, Delaware.
Hockessin.
10 minutes south of Kennett Square.
Yeah, I used to go to Hockessin meeting all the time.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's a meeting house nearby. There's a meeting nearby and a meeting house nearby.
Is that where you live now?
Sorry.
Yes, that's where I live now. What was that, Meg?
I said I went to Hockessin Montessori. I was like the first 3 years of my life, I was there.
Cool.
Oh, wow, I never knew that about you, Meg.
Did you guys see the poem that I put in our little teams? It felt like a good one for reopening. I'm going to share it in my small group.
In which channel?
Random.
I do not get all of our team's channels. I can't, I've been working on it for a couple of weeks and all of them don't show up from my phone. It says that I need to change my settings and I've tried to do that a couple times, but so I only receive like a certain number. It's really odd. So I must have missed that. I'm sorry, Meg.
I can chat it to you.
I love this poem.
I think you have to change the notifications per channel.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Meg. I love Emily Dickinson.
I do too.
I don't know what all these words mean. What is a bobo link for a chorister?
I thought I thought it was chorister.
Chorister.
Let me look up Bobo Link. It's a songbird.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of it is about the sounds.
I get it now. Yeah.
Hi, Terry, welcome. Folks are in breakout spaces. There are about 10 more minutes left. Would you like to be in a breakout space and join the conversation? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was thinking this was at 7, so I don't really know if I can contribute much to a breakout session, but if you guys want to send me someplace, that's fine.
And
I think we
folks
only
are
have
just talking about challenges and opportunities for as folks move into more hybrid spaces.
I think we're coming, are we coming back at 7, TJ?
We have about 6 minutes left. Never mind, not 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'll just hang out here.
Okay.
I have, I mean, secondhand, I have some experience with this in hybrid AA meetings, and so I'm aware of some of the challenges.
Great. Ed, welcome as well. Guessing you heard by now, folks are in breakout spaces, about 6 minutes left until they come back, but I'm happy to have you join one if you want.
I'm not sure what, I feel like I'm so late. I'm sorry to have been so late.
Not a problem. Yeah, folks are happy. We're happy to have you all hang out here with us until
What-
breakout
If
space
you don't
starts.
mind, I would feel more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
What,
Yeah, that's totally fine.
what are they discussing? What am I missing now?
Basically, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities when we reopen?
My question is, can we do hybrid? We are such a far-flung quarter where I am. Can we do hybrid? And what's involved in doing a hybrid meeting? There are some people who feel that Zoom doesn't do it for them, and other people who have come to that and really are more nourished by that than they were initially. And because many people have to travel over an hour where I am, there's people who would like to continue Zoom.
Yeah. And possibly the second round of breakout spaces might be illuminating as well, because there'll be different topics there. So there might be some more conversation to help guide that.
Like how to figure out a hybrid situation. Yeah. I'm the clerk of Upper Susquehanna Quarter, and we are far flung. We are geographically probably a third of the yearly meeting, but not too many people per square mile.
Yeah, that definitely has a particular challenge to it.
Yeah. And there are people who said, I can make it to meeting now and really appreciate the Zoom and maybe would like to continue it. Plus, the carbon footprint is so much smaller.
Right. I'm just going to broadcast a 3 minutes left message to everyone.
Sure. Three minutes left. Captain Terry Christensen, I appreciate whatever it is you were eating. That looks really good.
It is. It's dessert. It's an apple cinnamon bagel.
Good call.
Ed, if you have questions, I have some ideas about the kinds of things that go on with this based on another program I'm in. I'm in Bucks Quarter, and I'm the recording clerk for the quarter. It's pretty easy to find my email address. Be happy to converse with you later.
Yeah, such a powerful quarter you are, Bucks Quarter.
I can't take any credit for that. It's like my college football team. They were successful despite my presence on the field.
You played college football?
Yes.
Where?
Little tiny place, Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. I was, they called me a middle linebacker. I was a glorified nose guard in a 2-point stance. And as I said, there's a picture my freshman year and a picture my senior year. And what you'll see in the difference in those two photographs is that all the coaches, particularly the defensive coordinator, their hair is much grayer 3 years later than it had been when I was a freshman.
Yeah. I did play football, but not beyond high school. I went to Penn State, and I was pretty much out of my league.
What's our status on?
How much time is left?
just about a minute.
Okay.
Will I be able to slip into whatever it is you join, reconvene in a minute?
Yeah, there'll be different groups in the next section. It'll be
Thank
good.
you. And since I'm just joining, does that mean I'll be woefully inadequate for the next effort?
No, you'll be whole. Don't worry.
All right.
Just leave the woeful inadequacy up to me.
Could I ask you to do me the shade, if this shade goes up? Yeah.
Hey, Tony, welcome. Folks are in breakout spaces right now and just about ready to return. As you can see, folks are coming back now, so we'll get started in a second.
Welcome, everyone. We're waiting for our small groups to come on home. I'm sure the discussions that were taking place were engaging and riveting. I'm going to take this opportunity to remind note takers to email Olivia, bring in their notes. And probably I'm going to be annoying, reminding folks to do that on repeat. So we're not going to receive reports from all the small groups. Instead, I would love for two things to happen. For the next 10 minutes or so, let's think together about what were some of the common themes that we heard in response to the query, which was, what are some of the challenges and opportunities for reopening? And as we regather, I'm going to invite people to start putting in the chat the common themes that you heard. And for folks who just joined, this time, we were just in small groups. In small groups, we were considering the query, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we face for reopening? And I want to invite folks who are in the small groups and tracking common themes or highlights to start chatting away in the chat and also sharing with the whole group. And I will bring in what's happening in the chat occasionally. So if you want to say something or verbalize something, raise your hand virtually. Raise that virtual hand.
In our small group of 4 people, we heard from 3. And one of the common themes that I heard was that there's a core of people who are resistant to technology. So they're resistant to the hybrid. I saw it in my meeting at Gwynedd with a core of people who just refused to come to worship on Zoom. And now that we're back in the meeting house, I'm seeing resistance of some of those same people because I gave priority to those that didn't relate spiritually to Zoom to come in person. We're finding that they're resistant to having the hybrid meeting, which in our case involves a single wide lens camera and a lot of microphones.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks for sharing that. Susan, you're also muted if you'd like to speak.
Sorry, I just had a thought that PYM has a great role to play. If you were to track technologies that work for various size meetings, and then have a library of possible technologies that could help meetings who wish to become hybrid.
Great idea. Thanks, Susan. Bruce?
So I'm a member of Central Philly meeting. We have not tried hybrid meetings or any meetings together yet. The Zoom meetings have really worked for us. I guess there are a few people, there may be a few people who don't participate, but we have more, I think we have a bit more, well, we definitely have had more people attending Zoom meeting for worship, maybe 10% more so than we're attending in person. And we picked up, there are a number of younger people who have joined, participating quite regularly or very regularly in meeting for worship via Zoom. Also, for some of us who live at a distance from the meeting, we're attending meeting for worship a lot more regularly when we can do it by Zoom than when we had to drive all the way into the city. So I think there's going to be a real question for us of how we're going to do all this. Also, I know very little about how we would do a hybrid meeting, but I just learned that at Haddonfield meeting where they project the pictures of Zoomers on the wall, that the most they can handle is about 25 people. And we usually have more than 50 attenders at meeting for worship, sometimes 70 or so. So those are issues that I lift up. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. I want to turn to the chat briefly. We had some folks sharing about discerning friends' comfort levels with screens in the worship space, sort of speaking to that same idea of there's probably a spectrum of comfort from people resistant to tech to people who are super excited about it and everything in between. And then this idea of how much technology can we introduce in our meetings, both from the same comfort level place, but also in terms of just logistics, like how much can a meeting house accommodate? Being able to meet outdoors. People can join who live at a distance or have mobility challenges, which is another. There have been accessibility benefits to joining via Zoom, as well as downsides like families and families with young children and youth often have more or less disappeared from our communities because they're so zoomed out from school and work. And then thinking about risk, like what level of risk are we comfortable with in terms of meeting back together in person and how the virus will still be circulating for a long time. What happens when someone applies for membership as a virtually only attendee? The issues of trust and sacred space, and lots of other thoughts shared in the chat. I think we will save the chat this time and hopefully incorporate that into our notes and follow up. Were there others who wanted to share ideas verbally? Deb, I see your hand.
One thing that came up in our group that a couple meetings sort of resonated with is making sure we create enough time to come to decisions about what format we will take on so that we come to that decision with a sense of unity. In many ways, our decisions about what format we take, there didn't always feel like there were lots of options because we just couldn't meet in person unless we were a really small meeting. In some ways now we have more options, and making sure we take the time to really sort of thresh through what the options are and find one. And then test it, live with it long enough to see if it works before switching.
Deb, I really appreciate that, that idea that we need to give ourselves time, that this is a discernment process and in so many ways is is going to need the input from all the different voices in our communities, the folks who have been experiencing greater inclusion and less inclusion, and all of these various concerns, and spending time with each one as we approach what feels right for our community. And each of our communities may come to different conclusions. And so while we can share out what we had and what the December process that we went through, like in my local meeting, that might be valuable for other meetings, but who end up deciding to do something different. And that's the usefulness of being connected through the yearly meeting, that we get to have all these different experimentations take place, and then we have a place to share how it all went with each other. So that was completely not enough time to go deep. And that is the point, though, is that we're spending time together surfacing all of the issues, not necessarily deciding on them or addressing them or drawing conclusions at this time. So it's because it's time for us to transition into the next set of small groups. And I think we had planned on spending 40 minutes on the next set. We are a little behind, so we'll cut that down to 35 minutes. I do want to take a very brief moment to invite each of the small group facilitators to talk about what the topics are that they're going to be covering, starting with John. John, are you ready to talk? Awesome.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
We'll be talking about resource friends.
Resource friends. Great. John, do you want to elaborate? Sorry, I asked you to be brief, and now I'm like, do you want to elaborate on?
Yes, a resource friend is a person, is a friend with a particular expertise, let's say in technology or in ministry and pastoral care, who has recognized gifts by yearly meeting, who's available to assist a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting in working through some of the challenges that we're looking at today. How's that?
That's great. Thank you. Meg, why don't you go next?
So in my small group, we'll be talking about mental wellness and spiritual wellness during these times.
Thanks, Meg. And Melinda and Oscar are co-facilitating a moment. Does one of you want to talk about what you'll be saying?
Sure.
Facilitating? Great.
We will be discussing how to center those who are in the margins in our meeting communities and those who have been absent because of the pandemic.
Great. And I'll be facilitating a small group where we're going to be focusing on engaging further in what are all the things that we would want to see in a guidance document that the yearly meeting would write. So we won't be, again, addressing them in depth, but just spending some time together surfacing all of the different things we'd want to see a guidance document address. And you'll see in the chat, John's group is group 1, my group is group 2, Melinda and Oscar's group is group 3, and Meg's group is group 4. So we're going to set it up so that you can choose your own small group, but let's hear from TJ if there are any other technical things we should be paying attention to.
Just that you will also see those designations as the breakout room options come up. You'll see 1 John, 2 Zachary, 3 Melinda and Oscar, 4 Meg. So you don't have to remember it completely by hand. It's just this very short description up there. But Jen, I don't know if you have a question or because I see your hand raised.
Yes, for John's group 1, is it just if you want to become a resource, or do you go there if you need a resource?
we are in the process of recruiting resource friends, and we're also in the process of learning what people need in terms of resources. So, for example, I'll be talking about our experience at Lehigh Valley meeting and how we've addressed some of those issues.
So it sounds like both. The answer is both to surface the need for resource friends as well as to recruit. Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I thought that there was a group 5 that was going to discuss what came up in our previous discussion.
We were setting aside the possibility of a 5th group if in our discussion there was a topic that came up that felt like it had life that needed a 5th group. But I'm not sensing the need for a 5th group.
All right, I'm going to open all rooms and then you will receive an invitation to pick the room that you would like to join.
Well, I know that we had a really rich discussion. We got so carried away that someone was speaking still when we came back. So I hope that the same thing happened to all the other groups. No, just kidding. So now that we're all back into the main space, yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, yeah, these things happen, don't they? Well, now that we're all back in the same space, we probably were feeling, at least I know I was feeling really engaged. And so, and had some like energy in my body of really wanting to get as much as I could and absorb as much as I could. I feel like it would benefit me to return to my center a little for the rest of our discussion. So let's just have a minute of worshiping, of settling, of holding all the things that we've maybe discussed and returning to our centers. So let's take about the next 25 minutes. We're going to aim to be closing at precisely 8:30. So let's take the next 25 minutes, and I'd love for folks to share, again, what were some of the common themes of what you heard in your small group. And feel free to write those in the chat, as well as to verbalize. So we're looking for common themes that were shared in the small groups, things you wanted to highlight. Also, note takers, remember to send your notes to Olivia. I was the note taker in my group. I don't think I actually articulated that in my group, but you guys don't worry, I was taking notes. But if you happened to be taking notes, feel free to send them to Olivia. In any case, what were some of the shared themes friends heard in small groups? Please raise your hand electronically to speak or put them in the chat. Put your answers in the chat. Jim?
There seemed to be a very strong, a number of people in our group mentioned that it would be really nice to have a place where we could see what other meetings have done to deal with these problems, so that to have some kind of resource, so we don't all have to be reinventing the wheel, that we can actually look to see what a resource so that people could see what is happening, what other meetings have done, and not just, it can be nuts and bolts, but can also be overview of what they've thought about. So to have somebody, have people share that in some way would be good.
Okay, so I'm gonna go look at the chat and verbalize some people's thoughts. Oh, Susan, why don't you go ahead? Susan.
Yeah, I'll give you a minute to do that. I think that a really important, we're talking about marginalization, and I think a really important theme came up, and that was how we engage our youth. And I think our high school kids, our college kids, our young kids have been so challenged by having their lives go virtual that it's been hard to engage them. And I think Melinda and others have been trying valiantly to create some new models. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to stretch that. I understand there are the traditionalists and the stretchers, but this is an opportunity to find new ways to engage younger people in what we do.
Thank you, Susan. So I'm going to read from the chat a little. Alice talks about, what I've heard is that other meetings have wrestled with these issues more than our meeting has. So I feel we're, quote, behind in the process of considering how to proceed. Barbara talked about there being a shared theme of concern for feeling of community or wanting to feel like we're in community. Inclusion, Lee talks about inclusion as an ongoing issue for Friends. The pandemic has shown a bright light. How do we move forward, including all? Scott talked about meetings considering hybrid worship need to have a careful discussion about how that community wants to incorporate technology in their lives, reconciling differences of comfort with the technical aspects of the process. Grace talked about there was a frankness about how meetings face challenges with age, with missing people from between 25 and 55. And Melanie talked about, for some of us, Zoom has been oxygen, a lifeline, but there was concern for people who disappeared after the shift to Zoom. How about other thoughts Friends had about themes, common shared themes that came up in your small groups?
I was with John, and I got the feeling that he was recommending that a resource person come and actually talk to the meeting, and then actually be able to maybe help tell the meeting what they would need, and so forth. And I'm not sure where this resource of people was going to be, John. I'm sorry.
So I'm noticing that folks are leaving space for others to talk, and that's great. So I want to poke at things a little and actually shift. I'm wondering if the small group leaders could give a brief report of some of the things that your small group discussed. Then we'll see where we are, and maybe we can wrap up early. So John, do you want to talk a little bit first?
I'd like to, first off, I'd like to thank people for coming. What I heard was, how do we do it? And what do we need? And that was part of what I heard. I think Wendy can go a little bit deeper with the notes she was taking, because I was kind of focused on talking from my slides and listening to what people had to say and acknowledging people. And Wendy was being diligent in kind of recording. And if I could pass this over to Wendy and have her follow up.
Absolutely. Well, John talked a little bit about what is a resource friend, because the yearly meeting already has resource friends, but they're looking to develop resource friends to help friends with their hybrid meetings. And that can be twofold. It can be working with the technology, but also working with ministry and pastoral care to discern in the meetings what their level of comfort is with it. Do they want it? And do they have the resources? They may want to have a hybrid meeting for worship, but if you don't have the technology people available or those who want to learn, then you have a bit of a problem. At Bucks Quarter, we've formed our own group, an ad hoc technology group that can go and help friends in the quarter, and they'd be more than happy to go and visit other people, but the distance is a little far. So if friends could have close technology people, some sort of resource, that would be a good idea. Some people from Millville meeting who are at the upper ends of our geography were mentioning that they'd love to have some technology help. There was concern that certain people end up doing all the work, and then if they need to be there on the technology end of it, they often don't get to be in worship. So having the responsibility spread out over a number of people is something that probably is a really good idea. And I'd just like to end that John went into a lot of how Lehigh Valley has gone through their discernment process. And I loved what he said at the end, that it's a strategic and transformational decision, and that it will really change the way they experience their faith, and that change can be really scary. And we've just gone through a really scary time to begin with. So this can be a real challenge to some meetings. Did I capture it, John?
Thank you, Wendy.
Great. Meg, do you want to talk a little bit about your group?
Sure. In our group, my group was the healing, spiritual wellness, and mental wellness during these times. We read a poem that I can put in the chat by Emily Dickinson. We talked about what spiritual wellness looks like and feels like for us, and people spoke of the feeling of the gathered meeting, and on Zoom, being able to see people's faces more intimately. People talked about how it doesn't when someone doesn't show themselves on Zoom, it doesn't feel like they're being in the shared space together. The challenge on Zoom, that when a community member is in distress, not being able to offer the same kinds of physical support that you can when you're in the same space together, just being a comforting presence and sitting closer to the person. And we talked about what mental wellness looks like and feels like for us. That's when Zoom being a lifeline really came up for people, and Zoom being able to give people more access to PYM, and feeling more a part of broader Quaker communities than they have before. Mental wellness looking like and feeling safe, feeling like you can express yourself without being judged, feeling connected, not feeling cut off. And then we got into this connectedness. One of the friends in the meeting said, being connected is increasing the distance of knowing each other. And I really loved that. That was really meaningful for me. And so then we did a visualization on connectedness in meetings, and friends shared times of meetings going on 20 minutes longer than after the handshake, and sitting and meeting and connecting with people and being on the same page, and that feeling that we haven't been on the same page because you don't, with those that have left Zoom, you haven't been able to know what's up with their kids or their parents. And so there's this feeling of like reunifying as a joyous moment for us, but also one that needs to be tended really like carefully. We don't want to make any missteps of exclusion. And so I'll just name 3 more things before I wrap up, which is there were some really cool specifics that people named in our group too of what their meetings have done. One was a phone bank where my sense is, and I think, Barbara, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a committee where each member would call like 6 members of the meeting on a weekend and to stay in touch and still feel connected. And that worked until people were just tired of talking or didn't have any updates. One meeting is planning a retreat to really focus on intentionally coming back together. And those might be the 2 things that are popping off my screen right now for me of like specifics. But yeah, that's our group.
Thanks, Meg. Oscar and Melinda.
Thanks, Zachary. So our conversation focused on the challenges of dealing with centering our marginalized members, and it's all over the spectrum in terms of what that could mean. So we highlighted the fact that that would include BIPOC, our older friends, particularly those who might be dealing with ailments or mobility issues, and how we are including them, children, of course, youth on that spectrum as well, from the smallest of the youth to the ones that are more able, and what that means in terms of how we're connecting that cohort back in the buildings, as well as via Zoom. Technology seems to be a thread that has been discussed. It seems like in all of these groups, being a concern and an issue, an opportunity and a challenge. So we discussed that as well. We also noted, I think overwhelmingly, and I'm sorry for my little dog barking his little head off. Nobody's out there, but he doesn't know that. But how we've always maybe been challenged to center our young people, particularly the ones that get maybe a little more tuned out as they age a little bit, how we are incorporating families in this context of helping them bring their children, or encouraging and incentivizing in healthy ways for their children to be coming to a Zoom gathering, let alone a hybrid meeting for worship in the building, in the brick and mortar building. So we kind of went back and forth with we didn't really come up with a lot of solutions. I guess there were things that were thrown out there that hopefully people captured as things that they will take away and think about. I think the other thing that makes the most sense to discuss was the fact that there were people, and I think I saw Grace put this in the chat, there were people who had shared a traditionalist mindset was being raised by members of their meeting, in the sense that we want to go back to the normal that we knew, or they have been moving forward as if nothing has changed anyway. So maybe 2 different kinds of camps, but people who want to be considered traditionalists, I suppose, in a way that we don't do anything different. We go back to what we know. We go back to what we used to do before Zoom, and maybe because Zoom for them is a technological impediment, or disconnects them from worship, all of the things that could be getting in the way for them, maybe wanting to impose, let's go back to the norm, which is everybody comes back to into the building, and how I think there's an opportunity to expand on that, to really have folks be thinking about all of the other Quaker contexts that we should be thinking about with regards to community, and how that sentiment might be the marginalizing sentiment that could make people not want to come back in other ways, whether it's Zoom or back into the meeting house. So I think that may cover it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I just want to add something that I don't know that anybody covered, but one of the joys of Zoom has been meeting everybody's animals. And we know cats and dogs, and I saw a dog on here earlier, and it's just one of those throwaway things that has just been wonderful.
Thanks, Barbara, and thank you, Oscar. I would like to read something Melinda Winter Bradley put in the chat, and then maybe invite us into some closing worship. When children and youth return, if they have been absent or only on Zoom, it will be important to pay attention to helping them rebuild community and rejoin the circle of children in the meeting. We had our first in-person, masked, etc., with all ages last week, and we're very intentional about making a threshold for them to cross over and be welcomed. There were children holding back who told me they had only seen other children on Zoom in the last year, and the adults reconnected everyone with care. There may also be anxiety after months of degrees of isolation, so asking families what they need and what their children need is important. With that, why don't we settle into about 5 minutes of worship, and then we'll close 5 minutes early. Well, thank you, friends, for this really generative time together. We will share the recording of this event and detailed notes from the all group and small group discussions, advanced documents, and other ways to engage within the coming week or so. I hope all of you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Have a lovely night.